Hi guys, so here with a new video, and this video, it is not a tier list video. I use a tier list to actually express my feelings towards a spec, but we're going to rate healers that I've been playing as a DPS. So I am a DPS main, and I've been playing a bit of healers for solo shuffle and just in general PvP because we want faster queues, and we're trying to find fun on the classes that we do play. And I'm going to rate them first and foremost about the fun part of the classes, if they're fun, decent, meh, awful. And we're also going to then do a second part, which is still in the same video, where we're going to talk about aggressiveness, passiveness, and just in general the playstyle of said spec. Just again, a disclaimer, it's an opinion. You may find some classes more fun than others, which is alright. Yeah, I think it's fine. But if you want to have my opinion, as a DPS main, I main normally some ranged DPSs, like for example Warlock, Elemental Shaman, and also main melee DPSs, like for example Warrior, DKs, and whatnot, even also Enhancement Shaman. So we do have some feedback to give to those healers. I also play way more aggressive normally, but some healers are just a lot less aggressive than others, right? So let's talk right away. We have currently Resto Druid, which is one of the specs I've been playing a lot these days because I wanted to form an opinion since the Treants changes. So we have a new talent, which is Treants, effectively giving us like between 15 and 20% increased healing over a match, which is quite nice. I do find it fun, but I think on the tier list, like again on the tier list maker, I would say it's decent. The reason why it is decent for me is that it is a feeling like a druid class. You can effectively play a bit more aggressive with cyclones, do some star surges here and there. You can of course always reapply moonfires, and with your talents you can really do some really okay to the lowest possible damage possible for a healer, but it is somewhat very passive, and that's a spoiler for the next part of the video, of course. But it's fun, it's strong, it's way more passive than you would think, although you would think that Resto Druid is a bit more aggressive because of cyclones. The fear of getting kicked on cyclone is really real, and yes, you have 3 ounce and you have to reapply hearts every single time, and whenever you're playing like a double purge team, it's very annoying to keep those hearts alive. But as a whole, I think it's a decent spec to play as a DPS main. Resto Shaman is, for me, one of the most fun specs to play. It has nothing to do with power though, because I feel like Resto Shaman is one of the hardest classes to play, like specs to play, but also one of the least effective healers in the game. I think if I had to make a tier list right now, it would be maybe the second worst, with Disc Priest a bit like equal. At least in solo shuffle. I think in trees you can play some great comps as a Resto Shaman where you have way more abilities to use your kit. I think it's very hard to actually like do a good earthen wall totem without like wasting potential of it. Some people are also bashing the totems on demand. So again, if you have a healing tide and you don't have the possibility to move it to a safe place, it gets destroyed really quickly. But I really like the playstyle. I think how I play it is very aggressive. Again, big spoiler, but I'm going to make the second part way faster. I think Resto Shaman is, if you are an Elemental Shaman main, if you're like a caster main, you can actually find a lot of similarities with Resto Shaman, at least in how you can play. You can play also a very passive one, but I feel like you're going to be caught way faster up by the enemy healer. If you're playing very passively, it feels like you're going to lose most games if your DPSs are not doing their job. Of course, you have to sometimes, and I would say every time, cast a Hex whenever you can on the DPSers or the healer, doesn't matter. Also, Wind Shear should be always on CD. If they're casting, there is no excuse to not press it. It's off CD as well. and just in general your totem usage is the most important part. But I think it's a very fun spec to play. In my opinion, one of the most fun healers to play. Very frustrating though with the where you have to kinda stack mastery, which is something that doesn't help anything else except the healing, which is only applied to the people that are actually low HP. If you are not low HP, well, you're not getting applied. Of course, everyone gets low HP, so you have some usage behind it. But I think it would be way more fun if you can actually just stack haste or crit. But right now, I think every single spec has these difficulties where mastery is such a great stat in general that everyone is actually stacking mastery these days on a lot of specs. There's just a few specs where you want like haste or even crit, but Resto Shaman is one of you actually need like full mastery builds, at least right now. Disc Priest is fun, but currently it is not as fun as it could be in 10.2. In 10.2 it's going to be way more fun, way more chill, I would say, to play, because you don't have to press AGCDs before the ball gets rolling. You have like Mind Blast that is fused with Chism, which is a great thing. Penance that are going to get boosted by your Radiances, so it's going to be quite nice. But currently I would say that it is a decent spec. Why is it decent? I think right now in tempo 1.7, I feel like you have to press a lot of things to make it work. But the problem is, I don't like the mastery stacking on Disc Priest, which I am very much hating it. So I play haste, but I do feel like my healing throughput is really low whenever I'm going haste instead of mastery. But if I'm going mastery, I have a lot less damage output, because again, haste permits me to actually use a lot of my kit without losing the GCD usages of, for example, my healing applications. But if you have full mastery, it means again less damage, which means more healing though, but in general it feels a bit more sluggish to play. And I feel like Disc Priest currently it is a bit holding back because of the button bloat, which is actually going to be fixed in 10.2. If I have to talk about 10.2, I think it would be a very fun spec to play, especially in SOLOQ RPGs where you're going to have a blast. Your damage output will be very close to the lowest DPS of that BG, which is also a very fun thing. Holy Paladin. I think Holy Paladin, the most fun thing about it is that you have like such a big pool of spells to use that can actually help your allies. You are good in 2s, you're good in 3s, and you're good in Soul Shuffle. I think it's the best healer currently, but I'm not judging like the spec how it is on the tier list, like for example, is it S tier or not. It is like the fun factor. Do I have the satisfaction while playing Holy Paladin? And I think Holy Paladin is one of those specs that has a great rework previously. So this is a successful healer. I think it's a very good healer. They changed the tree to a point where you can actually take all the goodies that you would like for PvP. If you want to go for PvE route, you can also go for PvE route. You have some differences with melee wings or casted wings. You have like choices to make, and I think you can also play a playstyle that is way more suited to the melee wings without sacrificing the casted wings, for example. I really like that. Also, Judgment, making it possible to actually avoid a bit of damage because of the judgments that you're going to press. So again, incentivizing you to actually do damage. Having Glimmer of Lights on the enemy so you can actually heal everyone but also do some consistent damage. Again, it's not that big, but it's still going to do some damage at the long run. I really find it a very fun spec to play. I think in general I do prefer Resto Shaman, but if you again, it's way more fun to play a spec whenever you feel like the spec is doing good, of course. You have a mastery build. You can also play like half crit, half mastery, or full crit. Again, you have some ways to play. Haste is not really a thing, but you can also play haste, I guess. But you have way more things to work around, which is very fun to play as a Holy Paladin, in my opinion. Holy Priest is, for me, meh. I feel like it's way different, like mentality wise, than let's say a Disc Priest or a Holy Paladin or a Resto Shaman. Resto Druid is a bit different, but Holy Priest is literally, you want to press your heals whenever someone is low. You don't want to be preventive on your healing. It's really backwards how it heals. Damaging though, you can play very aggressive, you can also play very passively. Depends on your build, depends on how you want to play. I think it's also a very strong spec currently, although in 10.2 it might be a bit less. But it also is a very good spec just in general versus a few specs. Like for example, Affliction Warlock, you will have a lot of value on Prayer of Mending, for example. You have a lot of ways to play that spec. Is it my bias why I'm putting it on meh? I guess it's a bit of a bias. I have difficulties to portray myself as a holy priest. I prefer to play as a disc priest in general, and I find disc priest more fun than holy priest, so that's why there is a bit of difference. But maybe I should play way more holy priest to see if it's going to like be a fun spec to play. Maybe it's a very fun spec to main, and not really a fun spec to just swap with disc priest. Also, a thing that I really detest, but that's going to be a thing that I always discuss about. I think having specs really tuned because you want to be full mastery is a dumb thing. I think a lot of the masteries that are currently in the game are things that you have to stack because it's so strong, and whenever you don't go for that, it feels like your kit is not like working because everything is like tied to the masteries. They're going to say, but we're going to nerf this because we know that someone is going to full mastery and they're going to either break the game, or it is the purpose of the game to actually be full mastery, which I think is not the good thing that you should go for. I think mastery should be a stat that you are thinking about. You want to go for that, but you also don't want to forget haste and you don't want to forget crit. And currently I feel like a lot of specs just want to be full mastery because it is the meta, and it in the game asks you to go for that, which is for me just a bit weird, because again you have to just buff the kit and maybe change the mastery to a point where you can choose for mastery for maybe more throughput. But you can also go for haste or crit, which also gives you throughput, but differently. I don't know. I feel like this could be a whole different video, but I think that makes it a bit worse for me. It's the same for disc priest, and also resto druid. Resto druid full mastery is a bit needed, unfortunately. Would be more fun if it was full haste, but it is what it is. Mistweaver. I want to first and foremost talk about the two possibilities of playing Mistweaver. You have Mistweaver, the casted version, or you have Mistweaver, the fist weaving version. I'm not talking about power levels. I'm not talking about like who's strong or not. I think the casted version is awful to play. In my opinion, I think it's one of the most passive specs in the game. It has some CC. That's the only thing that is a thing for the casted version, pretty much. It feels like a resto druid, but even more passive than that. And I am a DPS main. I like to see some numbers. I like to have fun while doing damage. But I think just in general, Mistweaver's cast version is just not really great. You have like, again, more laid back approach of the matches. You can of course carry games because of that. I'm not saying that it is bad. I think it's just not a fun playstyle for myself. I find myself not having fun with it. But fist weaving, I would say it is like meh or too decent. Like I think it's like between them. The issue is, again, fist weaving is fun, but also not fun. It feels also weird where some matches you're going to be like a god, and then some other matches you're going to sit in Frost Novas, and you have to use your dispels for that, which is opening up the enemies to CC your allies without you being able to respond. I don't know, man. It's again strong. Again, the casted version of Mistweaver, you're kind of forced into mastery. The good thing about fist weaving is you're not forced into mastery. You can play haste, so that's a good thing. I think it's very fun to play around haste in general because again, lower GCDs, way more button presses, and way more impact in general. But I think I will put it in meh for fist weaving, and for casted version it will be awful. And since I do, whenever I'm playing Mistweaver, I play fist weaving, so for me it's going to be meh. Preservation evoker. The truth is, it's awful for me because I don't like the aesthetic of evokers. I think Draktyr is just not fun to watch. I do think it's very fun if you can bypass it. Personally, I can't bypass it. It's very difficult. to actually like enjoy my tune. Like whenever I'm playing a race, like for example Draenei, I don't like Draenei. Whenever I had like a warrior Draenei, I couldn't play a warrior, man. It was not fun. And then I switched to dwarf, I switched to human, I switched to many like races because again I wanted to test a bit of things, and I had like a lot of classes to play, and a lot of characters to play. I found myself having way more fun as those races than Draenei because I don't like the aesthetic of that race. Again, you might like it, but I just don't like the animations. I don't like how weird it is to have like gear on them. I don't like how they are portrayed. I don't like the lore as well. Personally, I don't like dragons. I think Dragonflight is a good expansion, but I detest the lore. I'm going to be honest. I wish it could go back to Lich King. That was actually the lore where I was actually into it. But Dragonflight, I'm just not fun. It's not fun to have like a lore of that. And it would have been better if you could actually like turn into a dragon if you were a human. But it's the same problem as Worgen, where if you're fighting, you are a dragon regardless. And if you could actually stay in human form, I would be playing, I think. But right now, you can only bypass that with add-ons, and I cannot be asked to do that. But anyways, this is pretty much. But gameplay-wise, I guess it's fun. But I can't bypass the race fact, so I'm going to stay alpha. Now let's talk about the aggressiveness or passiveness of every single spec, right? Because that's an important thing. If you're a DPS main, you might play way more aggressive or having way more fun. We're going to try to do it fast though, passive, and also in between, I guess. In between is also a good one. So we have those ones, right? We have aggro, passive, in between. Aggro means that you are very aggressive, you can play very aggressive, and that is actually the playstyle that is meant to be. Passive, it means that you can play very passively and have huge success with it. In between means that you can do a bit of both, or you can have a choice between them, and that is probably valid for a lot of specs, but I'm going to give my opinion behind every single spec. I think Resto Shamans has to play aggressive. You have to purge, you have to silence, you have to weave lava bursts. For example, what I do is I do flame shocks on everyone and get like lava surges. I'm going to do instant lava bursts every single time I can. I also play with Stormkeeper, so I do a Stormkeeper, lava burst, lightning bolt, lava burst, lightning bolt, and whenever it crits, it does a lot of damage. And sometimes, and actually a lot of times, I do have the killing blow, which is again very fun. And sometimes I have like very close to equal the damage of a last DPS. It's way more fun in BGs because you have way more liberty to do that. But in arenas, you will have to be very careful and know whenever you can play aggressive and whenever you cannot. You have healing tide and healing streams like next to you, and you can heal everyone with it. Then you can do lava burst, a riptide here and there to actually keep it up, and you can do a lot of damage and do a lot of pressure with that. Holy Paladin, I do feel like it's an in-between kind of spec. You can play very passively and just go for a harsh and maybe a repentance, or you can play a very aggressive build. I do that with like twos. Where I play like single target glimmer, and whenever I'm doing like a daybreak on the enemy, it does a lot of damage. For example, I try to throw a judgment, sometimes a hammer of vengeance. Again, you have a lot of ways to actually play the specs, and you have way more builds that some specs have, and I think it's a really good rework. So being in between is a big win. It means that you have agency on how you play the game. I think Disc Priest, you have to play aggressive. I think a passive Disc Priest is not the best. Right now you have like the problem where you are full mastery, so you kind of play passive, but you want to purge, you want to be able to do damage, to do some aggressive atonement healing, because if you are atonement healing, it means that they are healing way more than you, which means that at the end of the day you can win. You have to again try to shadow weave. You have to do a lot of stuff as Disc Priest to actually win games. It means actually deal damage whenever you can and try to make your allies survive the amount of damage that they get on their faces. Holy Priest, I think it's also in between. I think again it's up to debate. How would I play it is a bit more aggressive than the general healers, I would say. But you have the ways where you're playing super passively and what you're doing is a chastise sphere every single time. Or you're playing like a holy fire smite build where you're kind of try to weave all those spells into the enemy and try to get a lot of kills. Because of that, you can have a lot more damage than this priest if you're playing very aggressively. Again, depending on the comps you're playing, you can actually have a choice, which is a good thing as a healer. Resto druid, I think it's a very passive healer. You cannot really play aggressive in trees. There is only like in twos, I would say it's a super aggressive spec, but I'm going to like talk a generalized thing about the healers, and for me, generalizing Resto Druid is like a very passive one. Yes, you can aggressively cyclone, you can switch cyclones every single time. It's very risky though. Whenever you're getting kicked on cyclone, it is also GG sometimes. You're getting kicked and stunned and then feared or whatever, and you're dead. Or your allies are dead. I think it would be nice to have like a lot of quality of like life changes where if you're doing a star surge, it transforms you into a moonkin form. At the same time, it then removes the transformation, so you have the damage of the moonkin form, but you're not staying it, so you can still like continue your healing, something like that. I don't know. There's a few things that they can change to make it more aggressive for trees without breaking twos, but yeah, we'll have to see. For me, passive, it's not really a bad thing, but I think again in trees, if you're trying to feral affinity, it's difficult. You're going to get stunned and it's over. But mistweavers, there are two schools. So there is like the mistweaving casted form, which is the most passive healer in the game, or you play fistweaver, which is aggressive. So I'm going to say that it's an in between. Just because of that fact. But again, if you're casted mistweaver, you are not in between, you're just passive, and if you're fist weaving, you are aggressive healer. So I'm going to say in between because of that. I'm going to change fist weave, cast weave. No, I would say aggro, fist weave, casted, whatever. I'm going to write that, but you get the topic, right? Mistweaver are in between because of the two specs that you are available to play with, or two builds that say that are available to play with. Evokers, I would say the better evokers are actually very aggressive. The very good evokers are aggressive because they have like a lot of tools. Fire breath with the PvP talent removes every single hot. So again, if you're evoker, a preservation evoker, you're going to have a great time versus Resto Druids in general. Having the CC immunity sometimes are actually very clutch. I think in general, your mobility is really good. You're very up close and personal with your healing, so you have to be in the fray and doing some disintegrates here and there. Sometimes you have living flames that you can cast on the enemies. You can do some very good things. Unfortunately, I can't bypass with the race. I think if it was any other race that is playable, I would be playing. And if you didn't turn into a drag tier with your combat, I would probably play it as well. But right now, this is pretty much how I think about the specs. So if you are like ready to play healer and you want to, you are a DPS main, you want to play healer, and you still want to play aggressive, or you want to still have fun, I would suggest a lot of those specs. Again, Mistweaver is passive if you're not fist weaving. I think Holy Priest is mostly passive than aggressive. I think Holy Paladin is probably the most balanced one, where you can really choose to play very aggressive, or you can play very passively and have huge success with both. Resto Druid, again, you can have a lot of fun, but you're going to try to max range heal most of the time, and some games you can't really decide the outcome because you cannot play aggressive. While Resto Shamans, how many times did I win because I actually did a Stormkeeper? I can actually just like remember a lot of those times, so it's a very fun thing.